YouTube, hello, welcome back to Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. We're going to be doing all of the Cid weapon draws today. I've got 90 tickets here, and I just wanted to chat a little bit more about the Cid kit in general, because I've learned a little bit more about kind of the usefulness of Stop, what Enfeeble actually does. I wasn't sure during the live stream, and I wanted to at least follow up with the initial video just to clarify a little bit kind of what the actual benefit of those effects are. So at this point, very, very little in this game is immune to the status effect Stop or Enfeeble. So Stop itself is, generally speaking, a very useful effect to pause the enemy's actions, right? Obviously, that's what Stop does, but ooh, we got something new. Oh, is this the scimitar? Sick. Love that. Love that for me. Thanks, game. So this is by far his best weapon, by the way, in his pool. Being able to do the increase with the ice damage up, very good. So anyway, so there's very few things in this game, if anything at all, that I've been able to see that have been immune to either Stop or Enfeeble. And essentially what Enfeeble does is Enfeeble increases the tier of ice resist, physical attack debuff, basically anything that has tiers that you can debuff on an enemy. Enfeeble essentially adds one more tier. At least that's what the community has agreed upon at this point, is what the likelihood is that instead of it being like a 2-tier drop, so if it says mid, you'll see 2 tiers down on the enemy. Enfeeble essentially makes it 3 tiers, right? So it makes it more of a high debuff. So going back to the original thought on the banner pull video that we did, which you can find the link to that video down in the description if you're interested in seeing my thoughts on the banner itself. But the idea behind the actual one-off, like getting that copy once and be done with it, is still totally valid, because an enfeebled ice resist down is essentially the same as a high ice resist debuff, right? Which means you don't need to pull that to OB6. Now, if you get it to OB6, it's going to be a very powerful weapon, right? Very powerful, because it's essentially going to be the highest ice debuff that you can have in the game. So the Enfeeble effect itself is the real reason you're pulling on that, right? Ice resist down is also good, but Enfeeble is the real reason you're pulling on it. The reason why I was disparaging about Cid at this moment, right, at today's release of Cid, or at this point it's been 2 days, but at the current release of Cid, there's only so much that Cid himself can do to use Enfeeble in a way that is positive, right? The only things that he can debuff right now are physical and magic attack and ice resist. That's it. That's the only things that Cid can do himself. And then everything else has to come from your allies. And so for folks who have been playing this game for a long time, I bet you probably know where I'm going to go with this, but I want to reiterate really quickly for the folks that may not understand. If you have 2 characters that are doing debuffs, that means you have 2 characters that are not doing damage, generally speaking. Not always. Not always, in the case of like Zack, right, where he debuffs ice resist while also dealing ice damage, which makes him a little bit less of, I don't want to say less of a detriment, because that makes it sound like Zack's not helpful, but it's less of a detriment for your overall DPS, right? Especially for things like the guild battle, right? Now, it does do a decent non-elemental damage, but it's only, there we go, we finally get an outfit. It's only 620% non-elemental damage, and that's really low for non-elemental, like really, really low. And that's because it has 2 really great effects, the new limit break weapon does, but like, it's not enough to warrant getting it to OB6 right away for free-to-play players specifically, right? For free-to-play players specifically. And that's where most of my videos are going to be focused on, right? Is with free-to-play players in mind, or even just light spenders, right? We are not pulling on this banner unless you have the best team in the world for ice, and you're trying to elevate that ice team to get you to be able to clear content that ice teams wouldn't be able to clear without a little bit of extra help, right? And even then, like, Aerith still fits that role really, really well. The only thing that Cid helps with that Aerith doesn't is the physical focus ice teams, right? If you have Ice Aerith right now and the Riot Blade from the Final Fantasy VI crossover event, you're fine, right? You don't need Cid for your ice team. It's like Aerith does the exact same thing that Cid does. Another Radiant Lance. Ooh, is this another Scimitar? Let's go! Obi-Wan Scimitar's good. So So, and that's good though, because Sid does increase ice damage and physical attack with Scimitar, right? So if you have a physical focused ice team, that's great. Like Sid does a great job of helping you there. But then you still need to have another character in your party that now debuffs physical defense, because Sid does not have that ability, right? And I was trying to like hone in on that in the original video, that Sid just doesn't have enough in his kit to really help you like get all of the debuffs that are necessary. And so you're stuck then running another party member that does that for you. And although we are starting to see some party members that do both, so like Aerith as an example buffs your team's magic attack while also debuffing the enemy's magic defense, right? So she's doing both now. We may start to see that in the future, which is why I recommended pulling at least one copy of any limited banner for first of all, but why I'm like not 100% against Sid in the future is because it's probable that he's going to get that we're going to get more weapons in the game that do debuffs while also dealing lots of damage, right? It's likely, or even buffing your entire team. Like it's just going to continue to happen as the game progresses, because that's how another Radiant Lance. That's how the power creep in gacha games goes, right? It's just normal. Just like how Yuffie's weapon from the anniversary is the strongest single target physical non-elemental damage weapon in the game, and also increases your entire team's magic defense, which is a lot for one weapon to do. And Yuffie is a great example for my next point, where I think that maybe I was a little too harsh about my initial judgment on Sid. Was after Yuffie's release, Yuffie got released with a buff debuff extension outfit and a weapon that increased an ally's physical attack and her own physical attack at the same time. So it was the first time in the game that we had a unit that could buff more than one character at once, right? Every single banner for Yuffie after that point was damage focused. Like every single one was damage focused. We thought that Yuffie was going to be a buff debuff girly, and she had all these like elemental resist down weapons, and she had an AoE physical attack down weapon with the 4-point shuriken. We just thought that was the direction they were going to head with her. It was going to be basically a pure support. And I pulled on the Winter Yuffie banner thinking that that's what that was going to be. I was going to have a really solid support. I didn't really have a good support that was just built around like buffs, debuffs, etc., the elemental resist down. And so like I was like, okay, well if that's what Yuffie's going to be, that's great. But then every other banner that came out after that initial Moogle banner dropped was damage focused. It had Arcanums, like every single one of her banners I think were Arcanums. And so like there is a world where this is the first and last time we see Sid with an enfeeble weapon, and the remainder of the banners that he gets from now until the end of the year are just 3 or 4 Arcanums, right? There is a world where that's a reality. And so like in that regard, like this initial kit is still just okay, right? Unless those subsequent weapons release with additional debuffs, that enfeeble effect is only going to be as useful as the allies you bring with you, right? And that's kind of where my problem with Sid is, right? Is that he requires another ally to do something else in order to maximize the gains on enfeeble. And this is just, again, outside of ice damage stages. We're obviously in ice damage stages. He's great, right? He's great. There's no arguing that. He's great. He's the best when it comes to ice debuffing and ice buffing, right? Because he can do both physical attack and magic attack. He's buffing your summon damage ability. He's debuffing your enemy at a level that no other ice debuffer can do in the game, right? Nice. Guys, oh my god, we're lucky today. Look at that. That's the 3rd scimitar, and this is new. Oh, cool. This is the flare. So this is the diamond sigil break. Nice. That's a good pull too. Yeah, not mad at that at all. Sick. We've had some really good pulls with these. Nice. Super cool. So yeah, so this isn't a damnation of Sid, right? I didn't want my video to come off as like oh, Sid's never going to be good. Sid's going to be like, oh yeah, another 5-star. Lucky pulls, by the way. Sid's never going to be good. He's going to be this bad forever. Like that's not what I was saying. And I don't think it came off that way, but when I was watching the video back, I felt like I missed a couple points. And again, now that I know that enfeeble and stop are what they do essentially and how useful they can be, I do think that Sid has some potential in the future. But my point of him being just kind of okay right now still stands, right? If you've been playing this game long enough, there's a strong chance you have Ivy Collar on Red 13. There's a strong chance you have Riot Blade on, or Terra's staff on Aerith, right? There's a strong chance you've got an ice debuff weapon somewhere that already does the things you need to do. And all of those characters that have those ice resist downs, they have tools in their kit that also debuff the rest of the things that you need debuffed, right? Like the defense is down, etc., right? And that's where I think Sid falls a little bit, is that you need someone else to debuff those other stats. And although Enfeeble does a really, is this Radiant Lance again? Good Lord. And although Sid does a really good job of getting the Enfeeble up and making those debuffs even better than they were before, it's still another Scimitar. Okay. Can't complain anymore. That's the 4th Scimitar out of those 90 tickets. That's really good. Sick. That's OB3 on the Scimitar already. But yeah, so that's kind of where my point is, like, right? Let's go to his weapons really quick, and I can just kind of wrap this up with the bow. It's just that his kit is not. It's just not there yet, right? It's just he's missing that extra bit of oomph, right? And that's kind of where I'm at with Sid's kit today, is that, like, unless it's an Ice Week stage, he is not very useful outside of this, right? And that's where I'm running into an issue with Sid, is that I think that if he had like a physical defense down, a magic defense down, even if it was something simple, like if this the area of defense or area of attack weapon, or area of, I'm sorry, the AoE defense weapon, I can't even remember what the name of it was. I think it was this one. Was it Slash Lance? Yes, that does damage and increases physical defense. If this was a does damage, decreases physical defense high, all enemies, this would actually be great, because then he could run this with the Enfeeble, right? And he'd be able to increase that physical defense down even higher. And that, I think, has a ton of value as a support character, because then you can bring 2 DPSs that can just go all in and have Sid be your, like, okay healer, right? Because remember that even though he doesn't have an AoE cure, he still has the ability to, like, heal relatively well, right? Relatively well. But, like, it's fine, you know? It would get the job done, because you'd be able to DPS so hard that you'd be okay, right? So I don't know. It's a matter of it's obviously incredibly subjective at this point. So I don't want to, like, beat the matter too hard here, because obviously I think at this point we've all got our opinions on the matter as it stands today. But the reality is that this is a how do I phrase this politely? This is a subpar release, right? Because, like, right now he has one role that he's good at, and that's it. He can't, you don't really want him as your physical and magic attack debuffer, because he can't debuff defensive stats, and he doesn't have a good heal for your team. So, like, there are only so many slots in your team, right? You have 3 slots in your team. And right now, when you're slotting Sid in your team, you're not dealing damage with Sid, right? So one of your 2 other characters either have to deal a whole bunch of damage, or your one character has to be, like, elite level of damage, where they can just DPS themselves. And there are some stages where that's a thing that you need, right? But the stages that that is a requirement are so few and far between that I just don't think it's worth the resources or your investment today. Is that going to change in the future? Likely, right? Even Barrett back in the day, when Barrett got his micro laser, a lot of people started using Barrett as, like, a general, like, healer, because it gave him an AoE heal materia slot, and he has so much utility in his kit at the time because of Assault Gun giving the physical defense all, because of the what was it, W machine gun, I think, that did physical defense decrease high. You know, he had a lot of options that decreased enemy stats, right? And then, like, he also had some buffing weapons, and then obviously, like I said, micro laser was just a really good buffing weapon. Gave your teammate a magic attack buff, regen heal with boost heal, and this heal all, which is great. You know what I mean? He had a lot of options that could support his supporting builds, right? And then they released Electro Cannon, which gave him the AoE physical and magic attack debuff with excellent, like, some of the best magic R abilities in the game, with a high magic attack stat. So, like, this is all also, like, subsequently a very good support weapon, like a sub weapon. on top of being a really good support weapon. So like, it's Barrett got a kit that made him a better support than he was on day one, because what they were doing on day one was they released Heavy Hauser, which is a damage weapon, and like, this is the highest damage weapon Barrett's gotten, and this was a day one banner. This was released with Murasame Cloud, and he has not gotten a higher damage weapon since this point. That's the highest damage weapon he has in the game. He's got nothing but support, and now he gets his Scutcheon Cannon, which is an AoE magic defense and magic attack buff. He gets Shark Slayer, which is a Diamond Sigil Break, fire and water resist down weapon for 3 ATB with really great R abilities. So like, he's getting a lot of support there. So like, where Barrett at the beginning of the game was not necessarily one of the best characters in the game, he became a very good supporting cast role member because he got some supporting items that were subsequently released that boosted his kit up, right? So is Sid gonna get weapons in the future that, you know, do AoE magic defense down? Probably, right? Because he gets enfeeble, so they want him to be able to like apply those debuffs. So the odds of him being able to apply those debuffs are good. And if you want to make that guess that that's going to happen for Sid and invest in this banner right now and invest in the banner that he has right now, I get it, right? I totally understand it. However, I'm not a gambling man personally. And especially when it comes to gacha games, I just don't like taking a guess on something that we don't know the answer to. So for me personally, that's the reason why I just pulled the one time and skipped, because the odds of him getting another limited banner is pretty low, right? Vincent only had the one limited release. Kate Sith, I don't think even had, well, he did have one limited because he had the crossover banner, right? Kate Sith did, with Queena's Megaphone. And then Angeo has had that one limited banner, right, so far. And none of those three characters have had a limit break banner since, and even Yuffie has only had one limit break banner, right, which was the anniversary banner. So, food for thought. I don't think that the next couple of weapons they release for Sid are going to be limited weapons anyways. We probably won't see another limited weapon for him until 2026. So it's just a, you know, something to keep in mind as we move forward. You can pull the one copy of it. We're likely going to be able to add some more tools to Sid's kit in the future that'll help make this enfeeble effect a bit more useful, which is why, as always, like I said, mentioned in the video, and I'll mention this in every limited banner, but whenever it's a limited banner, always pull at least once to get up like a blue copy of the weapon, just so you can actually turn around and turn that into a 5-star copy down the road. And now that we know what enfeeble does, now we know that just one copy of this is great, right? Because this is essentially a high decrease in ice resist for one copy, right? With buff debuff extension on top of it. So this is a very good weapon for ice resist down. Obviously, enfeeble is still a good effect. And if you do have a character that does damage and decreases stats, right? It's still good. Like, enfeeble still helps you with in those cases, right? So as an example, this is one that I think is relevant, right? Let's say you want someone to support your water team, right? For the max damage challenge, because you're not worried about healing at all. You can take in Sid with this enfeeble effect, Kate Sith, and Tifa. Then you go enfeeble. Kate Sith uses his water resist down water attack, because it's water damage and water resist down, and Tifa uses her feathered gloves to lower magic defense and increase her water damage. That magic defense is now high tier because of enfeeble. That water resist down is now extra high tier because of enfeeble. And now all three of your characters can start DPSing nonstop, because Kate Sith constantly, as he's using that water DPS, is constantly reapplying the water debuff down, and Tifa is increasing her own magic attack with the bunny gloves, because that's what the bunny gloves do. So you don't have to worry about her magic attack at all. So the only thing you have to worry about is Sid doing materia damage, because that's all he can do for elemental damage right now is materia damage, and reapplying enfeeble. And that's it. So like there is a benefit. He does add value to a team, but those values tend to be in stages that you don't need a healer, right? And those situations for mid-high to high tier content is usually not happening. Generally speaking, you have a healer on your team. Some level of healing is on your team, right? And can Sid handle it with a cure materia? Yes. But because this isn't a cure-all, which I really wish it would have been, right? I really wish it would have been. Because giving him an X sigil boost assumes that Sid is damage-based, and he just isn't, right? He just isn't. So giving him a cure boost here, I think that would have made this close to a pull for me because of a cure all, because then he could have been your healer, right? But because he can't fill that role, and you're probably going to need a healer at that point, like we're lucky to the point that Aerith is able to be a healer and still deal damage because that's how they've built her out. But like that's the one scenario where you would be bringing Aerith, who is a healer, but also a damage dealer, right? I don't know, is there a physical version for Aerith where it's a physical damage dealer but they can heal? I guess Barret, but like even then, Barret doesn't have elemental options, right? Not high damage elemental options where Aerith does, right? So that's kind of where things start to slide a little bit. Tifa actually falls into that category. She has the healing waves, lifeguard wraps that she could bring in, but no heal all materia slot. So that makes things a little bit more difficult. There are obviously a ton of other characters that do have cure all materia slots like Red 13 and Matt, but they don't do a lot of damage either. Red 13 does, I think, the most out of the lot of them, but it's not physical. That would also be magic, so he basically fills the same role Aerith does. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. The point is this: Sid is a interesting character with fun new mechanics. The stop mechanic seems like it's going to be more useful than I initially thought. The enfeeble effect looks like it's going to be more a little bit more useful than I thought. I knew it was going to be good, but I wasn't anticipating it being a full extra tier. Appreciate y'all watching. This was really just for me to I wanted to share my polls, but I wanted to yap about Sid a little bit more because this is the most polarizing character release I think that has been in the game, and I think that that's not a bad thing necessarily, because like when Yuffie released and it was very clear she was a support. She, you know, had the elemental debuffs. She got a support banner right off the rip. So it made it very clear that she was a supporting character. Then when Cait Sith came out, kind of the same deal. He got a magic attack up that had a really cool like 20% haste. So they kind of like set the tone where, you know, Cait Sith is like the gambling role where you like, if you get crits, you get good stuff. If you have a chance to crit on your buff, and if it does crit, quote unquote, it applies haste. And that was the only application of haste in the game at that point, right? And then when Vincent released, they gave him a boatload of really great magic damage weapons, and then followed that up by releasing one of the highest non-elemental magic damage weapons in the game almost immediately after that, right? And have since released a ton of great weapons for him, and a lot of Vincent's kit has been like all damage pilled, so like you knew that Vincent was going to be a damage dealer. And so, and Geo, same thing. A lot of his stuff was tank focused. They gave him Provoke, they gave him Veil, so they gave him a role, right? And so clearly, the role that they're trying to imply onto Sid is a debuffing role that helps improve your debuffs on that opponent using Enfeeble, right? So the odds of him getting banners in the future that also support that mentality are high, but the reason why I have pause and the reason why I'm a little hesitant is because that's what I thought they were going to do with Yuffie as well, and they went completely the opposite route and went damage, right? Now, if Sid's damage weapons apply debuffs, it's a different conversation, right? If he gets like a 620% ice damage weapon in a month that debuffs physical and magic defense both, then I, you know, my foot's in my mouth, right? At that point, because then all of a sudden now he's fantastic, because then he can run this weapon, he can run that ice damage weapon, and now all of a sudden he's like the best. He's already the best ice debuffer in the game, but now he's like the premier. This is what you want, right? Because not only does he reduce the ice resist, but now he's reducing both defenses as well while dealing ice damage. And so, and if they give him an Arcanum on top of that to boost his damage up a bit more, then we're not having this conversation again, right? Like that's the truth of it. So food for thought again. Like I said, obviously you guys do what you want to do. This is your game. This is your account. This is your blue crystals. You do whatever you want with them. Have fun with the game. It doesn't really matter what you pull for, what you don't. If you love Sid, pull for Sid, man. Have fun with it. It's gonna make things a little bit more difficult than pulling for an Arcanum. But I think anytime you're pulling on a banner that's not an Arcanum, that's always going to be the argument, right? So hope y'all have fun. If you did pull for Sid, let me know how you did. If you're not pulling for Sid, let me know it in the comments, man. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about Sid in general. Let me know what you think about the banner. And yeah, just love having the conversation. I'm enjoying Ever Crisis a whole lot right now. I'm loving making content and making videos around it. So I hope y'all are having fun. If you are, make sure you like the video, comment, and subscribe. We'll be doing some more Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis beginner content, including a brand video. I'm going to be looking at materia as well. And again, for the folks who are, I wouldn't say veterans, but people who are not really new to the game, some of these videos may not be super helpful for you. But if you wouldn't mind checking out the videos when they release, giving it a like, giving it a comment, just to help boost it into YouTube's algorithm so the people who do need it can find it, I'd really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, we'll see you again in the next one. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.